dia, buenos dias, and good day. My name is Lisa Arthur. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of Sensedia, and I am honored to be hosting the global stage at this moment. For those of you online, welcome as well. We have 3,000 total attendees, 1,300 here in Sao Paulo, and all of you online. And I can't wait to introduce this next session. But before I get there, over here, where's our Slido code? We have a Slido QR code somewhere? Un momento, por favor. There it is. You'll see on this slide, we have a Slido QR code. Take a picture of that, put your questions in. And our goal during these sessions is to allow time at the end for your questions to be answered by our presenters. So that's the Slido link. Put those questions in. For those of you online, you can do the same thing. And now I want to get started. I am so excited to introduce our next speaker. This session is on the intersection of APIs and LLMs and how it's unlocking new risks, but also new possibilities. And we are honored to host today to give this session the CEO of Cyrano AI, one of our US customers. Now, Cyrano is about real-time artificial empathy to help improve customer interactions. But Scott Sandland, the CEO, will talk about more than that because he's an amazing human and his vision is to do amazing, great things to help people with AI. He's flown all the way here from Southern California, a very, very long trip, and he's going to walk us through this. Scott has done so much. He's a thought leader in the AI space. He's helped written books. He's also contributed to Forbes, Entrepreneurial Magazine, and as a therapist and the world's youngest hypnotherapist, he also has contributed to Psychology Today. We're grateful to have him on the stage. I can't wait for you to hear it. So please welcome to the stage, Scott Sandland.
And good morning, everybody. I've been asked to speak about a topic that for the last 6 months, all of you have been talking about, all of you have been thinking about, and all of you have gotten sick of being asked about because your colleagues and your customers, your friends and your family have all been asking you about ChatGPT, OpenAI, and what it means for your business, your customers, your product. And so I'm going to talk to you about that from my perspective, and let me introduce that a little bit. As Lisa said, I come from a slightly different background than many of you. I was the executive director of a mental health clinic that specialized in working with at-risk teens and drug-addicted adolescents. So I spent about 20 years having very uncomfortable conversations that were really important. And I watched what we call the teen crisis grow. And I had a front row seat for these problems getting bigger and bigger. And so I decided that we needed to build something that was not only scalable, but also could be applied upstream on a prevention side. And so what we did is we built an AI company that does linguistic analysis for psychographics. And we did this based on 2 very simple ideas. The first is that speech is a behavior. And that means in the same way that Netflix can say, people who enjoy these movies watch these shows, we can say, people who say these things have these thoughts. And also in the same way that Amazon says, people who purchase this will also shop for that, we can say, people who think this way will do these things next. And with that simple idea, we've been able to build a very complex psychographic tool. We're missing a slide. That makes this exciting. The idea is simple. We've created a tool that can turn 1 minute of speech into 75,000 pieces of advice. And we can tell you how to calm a person down, what will burn them out, what will upset them, how to negotiate against them, how to argue with them, how to mentor them, role model them, sell them a house, sell them a car, and provide mental health support services. And in doing so, we started in high-value sales, high-ticket sales, because we couldn't start in vulnerable populations. So we started in high-ticket sales like cars and homes. And in doing so, we were able to increase sales conversions by about 26% and reduce time to sale by 44%. We have just about 49 patent claims awarded today. And as we were doing all that, building our models, training our system, getting a bunch of great feedback, we got to the point that we could take it into the healthcare spaces and into the vulnerable populations that got us started. And before we did that, we went to the United Nations AI for Global Good conference where I was a speaker. And I spoke there specifically so I could find AI ethicists. And I sought out the AI ethicists and I asked them to audit our frameworks and our perspectives. And when I found the smartest AI ethicist that I could find there, a brilliant woman, I said, I built a tool that's designed to talk people out of problems and doing bad things. And she said, do you realize what that means you've done? And I said, yes. It means I've built a thing that can talk people into making bad decisions and doing bad things too. And she said, we need to talk. Oh, the slide's back. That's fantastic. And that really brings us here to Sensedia, because they help me keep the toothpaste in the tube or the genie in the bottle. And the reason this matters is because when I was looking for a new API management platform, I did the same thing that any of us would do. I went and looked at Forrester and I looked at the previous presenters' reports. I called a bunch of them. I did the thing that we all do. I did my due diligence. And Sensedia was the only one who really understood my vision when I said to them, I want to work with you, but I want to be able to restrict who uses my API. I don't want to go broad and big and get as many users as possible because I see how my tools can be used to harm. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen. And I need to find a partner that will appreciate that and work with me to make sure my business models and their business models are aligned with, human interest and social good. And Ken was the person I first spoke with, and he was the first one who got it. And immediately he said, yeah, we're going to rewrite our business plan with you. I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk to my boss. We're going to prorate things. We're going to do whatever we need to do to make sure that everything is done ethically. And so that took what was going to be a 3 or 4 month review process into a 2 or 3 week review process, because they were the only ones who cared that much about making sure what we were all putting out into the world had a net positive effect. Because when you think about what is called the quantifiable definition of God, and you think about where technology is going, we are getting closer and closer to all three of these things. So all-knowing, all-present, and all-powerful. Now, we're obviously not at 100% in any of these categories, but this becomes really interesting. So the first one is, of course, all-knowing. And we don't know everything that can be known, but anything that is known can be transmitted to anybody now. So anyone on the planet can know anything that's known. And we have, things like Wikipedia and Google and YouTube, et cetera, and Khan Academy where we can be taught. Next is all present. Just before I came down here this morning, I was a couple minutes late because I was playing Legos with my son on the other side of the planet. He's back in California. And we was on my phone playing Legos with him. And we've all done that. And obviously during COVID, we all were very reliant on Zoom and things like that. And so we are all comfortable with the idea of being present everywhere. And there's pros and cons to that one as well. And finally, and increasingly with the advances of LLMs and AI in general, we're getting all powerful. That's not just about computation. That's about bringing things into the world just by talking. With APIs specifically and function calling specifically, that means we have libraries of actions through Hugging Face, Rapid API, Zapier, and a lot of other tools. We can just say what we want to have happen And like abracadabra, it can exist with way less thought and effort than ever before. And in fact, in the last week, 2 different labs have synthesized molecules in real life from a couple lines of LLM input. So a person said to a LLM what they wanted, and a robotic system in a laboratory produced chemistry. That is, words into existence. And that's a very big deal that is difficult for us to wrap our minds around. So I want to help make that easier. We have to look at the considerations of this, because the first 2 of these aren't new. The first 2 of these are smartphones and the internet, as you can all see. And so as we're looking at this third one, which is the one that makes it the most real, we should look at how we've done with the first 2. And so we think, what happens when we give people these powers? And you think to yourself, what happens when you give 2/3 of God to a 14-year-old girl? And the answer is she dies a lot. The population with the fastest growing rate of suicide is 14-year-old girls. And that's not surprising. We look at isolation, loneliness, anxiety, deaths of despair, suicide, homicide. All these things have increased exponentially over the last 12 years. Basically, everything the American Psychological Association measures has gotten worse every year for 12 years. And in many cases, the rate at which they're getting worse is accelerating. This isn't just because of COVID. This predates that by a long shot. And everybody who's paying attention says social media and the internet and smartphones are a major part of that. And I know you're thinking, okay, I don't do that. I'm not a social media person. I manage a series of APIs that allow us to manage financial transactions or buy tickets to a sporting event or buy shoes. So that doesn't really apply to me. And let's explain why it actually does. Let's use this list. These are categories where the most common APIs being used. It's not exhaustive, but these 9 represent many of the top 75 APIs based on usage. And if we just use these right now and apply a bad actor to these with an LLM, you can start seeing how basic APIs have a lot more risks than they did 6 months ago. So let's pick on me. Let's hack my social media accounts and weaponize these APIs in an LLM to make my life worse. It's not that hard to do. Let's use some social media scraping, text data mining, email integrations, the right side of that list. And let's just find out that I'm a Lakers fan and I'm at the Lakers game today. And so you've hacked my systems. And so you use those categories and a couple others. And you send a message to every one of my contacts that says, hey, honey, hey, dad, hey, friend, I'm at the Lakers game, as you know. Well, because we can use sports updates, we can say, when LeBron James hit that big shot in the first quarter, we were all cheering and high-fiving, and my phone fell off the balcony and shattered. I've been using Apple Pay because I left my wallet in the car, and now I have no cash. I'm using my friend's phone. If you will send $50 to this link, I'll pay you back when I get home. That's easy. And now the LLM, who's data mined me, can carry out the conversation that that person wants to have. And I can input a picture from my selfie at the game, and you can do text to voice. I'm on YouTube enough that it's very easy to mock my voice, put some crowd noise in the background, and have it say, no, it's really me. Just send $50 to that link. Thanks so much. Anybody who's keeping track, how many pennies have I spent in API calls so far? And how many hundreds or thousands of dollars could I get with a bad actor in that move? Now, you could also do this for compromising the security of your systems, so on and so forth. You could also do this with, hey, I'm on the business trip, but my flight's been canceled, so I need you to resend something, travel information. Hey, because of the storm in Dallas, my luggage didn't make it, and that had my laptop charger. I need you to resend a certification link so I can get into the system. There's a lot of ways to use LLMs to automate all of that with high strategy. But it's not all bad. You could also do this with the good. Let's just use that right side of the list again. And if you are one of my high value prospects, I've never met you before, I can take the last 1,000 tweets you put up, I can take your LinkedIn posts, I can take a couple of things and make a very complex psychographic profile about you. So my first moment talking to you, my first impression with you, I can establish rapport and trust and be aligned on our values from the word go. I can mine your data effortlessly and customize my pitch, customize my deck, customize my conversational topics with you so that when you're comparing me to the competition, you say, this guy just gets us. This guy is absolutely aligned with our core culture. So there's good and bad there. And there's great opportunities to leverage LLMs to make all that easy, because I can say, and I really can do this with my system, I can say, take his last 1,000 tweets, run it against our API, and tell me what it says. And it gives me a 2-page report on bullet points of say this, not that. He'll do this, he won't do that. Use this strategy. Here's the subject line of your follow-up email. Done. And we can do that at scale. So if you have a CRM, we can customize that for every single person in your CRM. So we can take the campaign that you already wrote and customize every email for every one of your customers. So you could, instead of when you think about your segmentations can have a next layer down at the bottom, not just the behaviors, but psychographic segmentation in your CRM, so that everyone is treated from top to bottom, beginning to end in their journey, the way they want to be treated. And then your customer service reps can do the same. Customer success has this information, and all of them know, use details with him, use big picture with her, talk about relationships with this person. This person wants details and facts and numbers, and you can give the person the communication they want. But it's not all good, because when you think of that list, there's a lot of things on there that are about dopamine. There's a lot of things on there that are about sports betting, or social media is about dopamine, about excitement, it's about enthusiasm. And there's a real problem there. And the problem is our brains do not evolve in a way that keeps up with Moore's law. We are way far behind compared to these systems. And it's a really important thing to pay attention to, that this is an asymmetrical disadvantage for humans. And everyone is talking about this thing called the alignment problem. Have we all heard this term now? The alignment problem is when these two things aren't aligned, we lose. And as these things get smarter, we must make sure we are aligned with these AI systems. And here's the problem. The inputs we have to train the systems today are the same inputs that are making the population of the planet feel more lonely, more isolated, more anxious, and more depressed. It is the reason that 86% of therapists have the longest waiting list of their careers, and 45% of them say they are burned out and exhausted. And that's the inputs. The systems and machines, the flywheels that are spinning us in the wrong direction, as we're now talking about, wait a minute, we should have aligned with all this. Elon Musk's gotten a lot of credit, deservedly, for using first principles engineering in space and automobiles. He's disrupted two. He went back and said, let's look at first principles. And let's do that right now. Let's think about the first principles engineering of this problem. And when we do that, this is fantastic how it's missing slides. Yeah, we're missing slides. Oh, there we go. They sometimes show up. Here we go. These are our first principles. These are the most basic things. It's two hormones. They're pretty simple. Dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine is pleasure. We've all heard of dopamine. The way to think of this is quite simple. Basically, all of Las Vegas is driven on dopamine. Slot machines, gambling, bright lights, fun shows, drugs, all the cocaine and slot machines are basically just dopamine drivers. And those are fun, stimulating things for some people, but they're not sustainably healthy. There's a problem there. There's a lack. And this is what all our algorithms currently deliver. YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram push dopamine into our systems. The algorithms weren't programmed to find dopamine, they just happened to. And they learned that time on site is directly connected to this because when it gets taken from you, dopamine has a strong withdrawal component. Okay, let's look at the other one. The more complicated one, the bigger one, that's oxytocin. So oxytocin is the polysynaptic neuromodulator. It's a hormone that is about love and intimacy and connection. It's the moment you got married or watching your best friend get married. It's the moment your child was born. It's holding your friend's new baby. It's these moments of sincere connection. A friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Richard Nongard, explains that one as belly button to belly button communication, being really present with a person and just loving them. And that's a chemical. Both of these chemicals are produced in you, by you, all the time, based on what you're doing. And so if we can look at these two chemicals, we can look at how we could shift the alignment to optimize for these. Because what's happened is Facebook said, we want to codify the college experience. Their initial impulse when they were building the company was, we want to codify college. And college is both of these things. It's meeting like-minded people. It's going to parties, going to interesting classes. It's bonding with your roommate and your new significant other. It's all those things. It's great. But somehow the company, the intent of the company kind of shift, move a little bit. And the algorithms optimize over dopamine. And they optimize time on site. And they know, and they've done internal studies that show these people are doing a thing now called doom scrolling. And they've removed the ability to have these moments of pause where it says, you want to reload the page and just scroll forever. And Tristan Harris on the documentary The Social Dilemma used the term race to the bottom of brain stem. Race to the bottom of the brain stem is exactly what these tools are doing, and they're doing it dopamine instead of oxytocin. I want to introduce two simple ideas why this is predictable and obvious. And they're from their Greek literature. Two stories from mythology. The first one is a guy named Narcissus. Narcissus is originally a vanity, narcissism. Narcissus fell in love with himself. Fell in love with himself so much it would just look at his reflection in the lake or streams, and he would stare at it and ignore everybody else and go closer and closer until he falls into the water. How many of us have reread our own tweets? How many of us have been really proud of a LinkedIn post that got a lot of comments? So you reread something from yesterday that you wrote. I have done this in the last 10 days. I am guilty of this. I wrote an article in LinkedIn that got a lot of feedback and a lot of people said it was right. So I read it twice. Patted myself on the back. Really excited. We've looked at pictures of ourselves on vacation while on vacation. We're taking moments away from being present with the people we love to reminisce about 10 minutes ago. It's a weird thing that we're all a little guilty of. That's Narcissus. But there's another Greek story that's more famous that really applies here. Icarus. Icarus was a boy, his father made him wings and he could fly. Just a human, not a god. that could fly because of technology, and it worked. And just like technology, there are unknown unknowns. And because of those unknown unknowns, he flew too high, the sun melted the wax that held the wings together, and he fell to his death. And there's unknown unknowns in all our technology, and it's moving so fast, it's difficult to know. And those two stories with these two molecules are being played out on a global and generational scale, and we're all watching it. And all of us, as technologists, have a responsibility to protect these children from these problems, and we, globally, have failed to do so. And that's why suicide rates for people under 24 are the highest they've ever been. The second leading cause of death for people under 24 in the United States is suicide. They're killing themselves on purpose. And it's because we did a bad job. And when the kid falls from the sky because the technology worked and then something went wrong, we have to look at who made the wings. So, first principles engineering. Because the Wright brothers also invented the plane crash. When we invent things, we are responsible for the accidents that come out of them. And so we think about the things that can go wrong. We think about the things that with your technology could be used to generate too much dopamine, to pull people in a direction, to get them addicted to your product or service, to get them to make bad decisions or make it too easy for them. My son just got in trouble. A 7-year-old boy got in trouble for spending $50 on microtransactions in a video game because there was one my wife hadn't locked down yet. And so he just didn't know better, and the game tricked him into spending $50. So that was a teachable moment. And we need to think about the plane crashes we're creating. We need to think about what we're doing to those kids. And that's why planes have so many rules. So all the way through the supply chain, there are approved vendors, there's audits, there's rules about how long a pilot can be in the air, and all these things that make good sense so that when you and I are in the back of the plane, powerless, we feel comfortable, confident, and safe. We feel good about this because we know that everywhere through this supply chain, there were rules to make this go well. Now, I will also say about regulation, when I flew from California to Texas, they spent a couple of minutes telling me what would happen if we crash landed into water. Now, I don't know how many of you are up on the geography of America, but in between California and Texas, if you want to land in water, you've got to be a really good shot. But we still had life vests under our seats, and they explained it in 2 languages for us. So all regulation isn't what we're talking about. There needs to be common sense and thought to it, but we need to have it. We don't want to move fast and break things here. So, my proposal. I wouldn't tell anyone how to do their job, especially you guys know how to do your jobs far better than I do. But I'd like to propose something that you guys can discuss while you're having drinks tonight, or maybe take back to your teams when you get home. 3 steps API makes it fun, easy to remember, on what we can be thinking about in these conversations. The first one's accountability. And this is one of the big things that I talked with the team at Sensedia about, was making sure that I could have accountability into what my tool is being used for. Now, with my system, it's very easy to look at misinformation, propaganda, and lying. And so I want to be able to make sure that there are certain topics that can't be applied to my technology. And I want to have visibility into the usage of my customers. Next one is policy. I want to have a contract, terms and conditions with my customers that they're clear on what they can and can't do and what I can and can't do in response. Obviously, I can refuse service or remove service for bad actors. But finally, there's intent. Because intent can drift over time. And the stated intent when you start your company, you might bring in some activist investors, you might get feedback from the market, there might be a pivot or two, and it might be just small, natural drifts, like Facebook did. Facebook started off in one direction, and they've moved. There's no bad guys in that story. It just naturally happened. And so I need to, as a provider of an API that can be influential, to check in with those customers over time. It's not just getting clearance in the first time, and it's maybe just an annual review, but a moment to make sure, hey, what's your intent with this system now? With the tools we're giving you, what are the KPIs that you care about? What are the things that you're doing, and how can we measure that and talk about it to make sure that we're still all aligned? And what's in it for us? So I'm asking you to do stuff. Why should you? And the first answer is really simple. Because if we can start generating more oxytocin instead of dopamine, that means your customers will have a deeper level of engagement. Oxytocin, trust, respect, rapport, and intimacy with your product, with your company, with your team. That also means your employees are going to feel a lot better about it. And everyone's going to have a much better culture. Reduction in churn of your internal team, but also reduction in churn of your customers. So the longevity of your company, product, and service is improved. But also, this creates a better flywheel. As we're talking about the alignment problem, as we're talking about the data sets and the training models we are creating for these rapidly improving AI systems, we're going to give it better sources so that we can have a safer, better educated, more productive world. A happier population is absolutely possible by just shifting a couple things that are disruptive at first, but they're good business. And we're not asking you to sacrifice anything. In fact, I'm asking you to stop sacrificing things. I'm asking you to stop making sacrifices on your morals. I'm asking you to stop making sacrifices on your values. I'm asking you to stop making sacrifices of our vulnerable kids for profit. We're not asking you to actually sacrifice anything. We can actually have a better world. And the reason I believe we can do this is because of a slide that's missing. There it is. Cupid and Psyche. This is one of the only stories in Greek mythology that goes well. Okay? Basically, all they are is warnings, except for this one. This is a story of Cupid. We all know who Cupid is. He's the one that shoots the arrows of Valentine's Day that makes you fall in love. He gets sent to Psyche. Psyche's a woman, and they said, go play a trick on her. But he falls in love with her. And he says, I don't want to play a trick on her. I love her. And so they say no. And so they punish her, the mortal. And the mortal, this girl, this young girl, goes through trials and tribulations. But Cupid helps as a god. He helps her out in secret. The two of them work together. They end up getting married. Apollo sees what's happening and marries them, and they live happily ever after. That basically never happens in Greek mythology, but they do. And they do because the power of a god and the desire of a young girl loving each other was inspirational. And that is oxytocin. So what we are talking about is the power of gods plus oxytocin is the way we get to happily ever after. That's what I'm proposing. It's not just quarterly profits. We'll get that. It's not just reduced churn. We get that. But we also get happier outcomes, more deeply satisfied. So we're not making sacrifices on where we work or why we work and what we do. We have the culture behind us that gets us to where we want to be. So thank you. I'm looking forward to taking some questions. But again, thank you to Sensedia for giving me this opportunity to talk today. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a couple questions for you.
Great.
So, the first one, what makes an ethical API, Scott?
So what is ethics is a very difficult question. You know, what is a law is easy, but what is ethics is subjective. And so we just need to spend time thinking about the net impact on the world. We all know what pollution is when it's plastic bottles on the beach, but we also need to think about how we're polluting each other socially. So I think when we're talking about ethics, we need to be talking about a social ecology for how we're impacting the world around us with our APIs.
And then we have another one, and I believe this is the last one we have time for. What industry do you see best supporting the role for AI today?
2, I would say when we look at what will be the most impacted by AI over the next 10, 15 years, it will be healthcare and education. With healthcare, obviously there's going to be a bunch of stuff in imaging that's been happening for a while that's great. But there will also be stuff with gut biome and DNA that's going to be fantastic. But we'll also be able to create better rapport and personalized care. So value-based care, this means that a doctor can say, hey, we did a great job doing surgery on this person, but if they don't do their physical therapy, it's not going to stick, it's not going to work. So we can have customized output for a doctor that will improve patient adherence to medication, physical therapy, or behavioral change. That, and the other being education, we now have the ability to, and I'm actually going to do this, my sister's a teacher, we're going to do this this year. We're going to take all the things that her students write, run it through the system, and automatically create customized lesson plans in her classroom. So they have the standard courses and projects and all that they're going to do, but our system is going to tell the teacher, hey, this student, this will help them. This student, that will help them. So it's very human in the loop, but we're moving in the direction where organizations like the Khan Academy can create customized tutors for every single person in the world. So whatever you want to learn, it will create dynamic lesson plans based on what you truly understand, your learning styles, and how you want it to be applied. So when you think of those two things, those really are the silver bullets that can change society, is our ability to care for our people and our ability to educate the youth. So I say those are the two places we're going to see the biggest impacts.
Excellent. Please join me in thanking Scott Sandland from Cyrano. And Scott, I think I can speak on behalf of everybody, both online and here. We look forward to how much Cyrano can bring good to the world.
Thank you.
Obrigada. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Thank you.